And a good evening, everybody. Chris McDonald with you on this Tuesday night, the 28th day of November. We're grateful to have you on the show tonight, and we've got a dear friend of ours by phone tonight. Victor Alba could not be with us last minute, had to change nights. He'll be with us Monday night, looks like. But it's always a pleasure to have this gentleman, Jeemes Akers, with us. He's always good about coming on short notice. At least I didn't get you out of bed at 2 o'clock in the morning like I did last time, Akers. So we're making progress. We're getting you on about 9 o'clock tonight. So how are you, sir? It's good to see you tonight. How are you?
I am doing fine, Chris. Always a pleasure. Can you hear me okay from this end?
Oh, yeah. Everything sounds great. Sounds strong. We would have brought you on video. Just didn't have time to set it up tonight. But listen, we're grateful that you're on the phone with us. And I wanted to get your take about some things, and we won't keep you long. But I do want to ask you, since we talked last, of course, we talked after October the 7th. So we've had a couple of interviews with you since the situation in Israel. The big news right now, Jeemes, is the hostages. I read today that the fifth group of hostages, which is going to go right at the 50 mark of what Israel was promised by this terror group. Hamas is going to, looks like they're going to get all 50 of those, at least what I'm understanding. And then Hamas, in exchange, is getting about 150 hardened terrorist criminals that Israel's releasing. I don't want to really get so much in the moral weeds of this tonight. Look, I don't, we're never going to understand this on the surface why you would, take the 50, but I do understand spiritually why they would, because Israel is a nation that thinks life is sacred, and they honor life, and they care about the 50 lives. They would rather give up 150 terrorists for 50 people than allow 50 people to go perishing. But the question is, that's going to leave about 200 hostages still in that Gaza area tonight. I'm just curious, from your take and what you've been watching, monitoring all this, how you feel about this. I don't think it's easy to say whether Israel did the right thing or not. I sort of know why they did it. But in a way, it feels like they did make a deal with the devil. But for those 50 families tonight, it was worth it, because they've got their loved ones back. And a lot of these people, James, are not, they were not soldiers in this bunch. It was all children, women, and kids as young as 3, 2-year-old, man. It's gut-wrenching to look at these pictures of these hostages that have been held in captivity for nearly 2 months now.
Yes, it's and the as we talked about the last time, Israel always has a very short leash when it comes to time to respond to things before international pressure comes to bear. I think even as we speak, the director of the CIA and I think some Israeli intelligence types are huddling together in Dubai, in the Middle East, to try to extend the truce arrangement, and it's just, to me, it's just unconscionable that the world is putting pressure on Israel. It's like they have completely forgot about the acts of barbarism and butchery that took place on October the 7th. And Israel is used to that. It has happened repeatedly over history, and there have been numerous times in the past when Israel has had to release multiple individuals it has imprisoned, to obtain the release of a small number. In one case, one individual. Right. And it just speaks to the respective value of life on both sides, I think.
Oh, without a doubt. We had Ruth Landy on our show last night. She was a former advisor to the late Prime Minister Sharon Peres, and she basically said basically the same thing you just said. She said that, if one soldier gets killed in Israel, they will mourn for that soldier for weeks, James, because they have a time of mourning for the nation. 50 hostages to them mean a lot. They took this as very serious a deal, even though it cost them a high cost to get rid of these, give up these terrorists. And I'm like you, it is the insanity of the world tonight, and the insanity of the United States is we're lecturing Israel on keeping the casualties down. And Jeemes, in these conflicts and these wars, I hate to tell the knuckleheads in D.C., this is war. This ain't some skirmish. This ain't some political football that they can use and to make Joe Biden look strong and make the State Department look strong, or make us look strong to the Arab world that we're clamping down on that Israeli aggression that they claim that's over there. And I want to just take a coloring book, okay, with a pack of crayons, and I want to draw this conflict up in crayon for a lot of these anti-Semitic voices out there tonight, and a lot of these knuckleheads in D.C. that don't seem to get that message, that it was not Israel that started this war, James. It was Hamas and this barbaric act that they did on October the 7th. And look, you do something like this to a nation, you do something like this to a nation's citizenry. Look, I don't care what Israel does at this point. To me, it's not enough. I think they need to drive these people into the sea. Look, I pray for their soul, pray that they meet Jesus, but I pray they're blown to smithereens. I do. I pray that Israel takes them and there is no remnant of Hamas and no remnant of Hezbollah left, and turn their attention to Fatah next and say, you bring terrorism to our land, we're coming after you the same way. And I would send a message to Iran tonight that you're next. That's just me. Now, that's why Chris ain't the Prime Minister of Israel and Chris ain't the President, Jeemes, because I'd probably get us in a lot of trouble. What say you about that?
Well, you're probably going to have to move over on that soapbox and allow me to stand up there with you. I agree on all counts. One of the things, Chris, that hasn't been discussed on this, the fact that Hamas has entered into negotiations, even if they are sort of one-sided in terms of the numbers of people exchanged, is a little bit of a sign of weakness. Israel's campaign in northern Gaza, especially in terms of what it has done in the tunnels, it has far surpassed what anybody thought they would be able to do. They have been far more successful at flushing out Hamas individuals and leaders and eliminating various individuals. They've been far more successful, I think, than anybody predicted. And in my mind, that is one of the reasons that Hamas has sort of pressed all of its friends around the globe, to push this truce and to get a ceasefire underway.
Right. Do you see this ceasefire as giving Hamas more of a time to dig down deeper? And do you think that after this ceasefire ends, that Israel's going to have a tougher time? Because, James, I personally believe it was, and I understand the hostage situation. I'm good with this, but this delay and these CIA heads, and nothing against your former organization, but these morons in D.C. that think that having a couple of extra days for Hamas to get stronger is a good idea. I mean, it suspends reality to me. It just suspends all mindset of any kind of brain that we have in D.C. Not that that's not at a premium these days, but I don't understand it. And I'm wondering if there is something you see in this that's maybe at play here. Do you think that, America's made promises to Israel or made promises to even Hamas behind the scenes, and it doesn't make any sense why they would cease the ceasefire? I get the hostage thing, taking the pause for the hostages, but to me, you still got 200 hostages plus in the Gaza Strip that the Hamas people are holding against their will, including Americans, James. And it seems like America's not doing anything to get our own people home.
Well, yes, I agree. To my knowledge, none of the Americans that were taken have been released yet. Is that correct?
That's right. There's no American has been released yet that's been taken hostage. And, so, go ahead.
Hamas is obviously trying to exercise leverage on the United States as well as Israel. Can you imagine what would happen if you take a population equivalency, a group of thugs and terrorists in Mexico would cross the Rio Grande, come up into Mexico, all the border towns, indiscriminately killing, raping, killing babies in the womb, beheading people, and taking films of it to brag about it? What would be our response to that?
I would hope a response that we would bomb the what out of Mexico, okay, or wherever these people came from, and and drive these people out and kill them. And James, that's a death penalty. That's a death penalty situation. Look, you don't placate that, but I'm afraid with this country that we would probably seek some kind of social justice solution to this. And I can almost hear the talking heads on TV. I can almost hear this liberal bunch claiming that we need to get in their heads and realize why they attacked America and what did America do to cause this. And it's the same moral thing that they're doing with Israel tonight, James. You're not hearing anybody out there talk about the carnage that Israel has suffered. You've got people, even in church circles, talked with a good friend of mine today. She's been on this program. She's going to be back on next week. And we had a talk about this today. And she said, her circle of friends in the Christian community have shocked her at the anti-Semitism that they have said to her about Israel with no moral clarity about the evil. And it's the same thing we're doing to Israel. We're trying to get the world to try to let Israel tell us, what did you do to make the Hamas terrorists do this to your babies? James, that's insanity. That's just plain insanity. Even for a South Georgia boy like me, that's insanity.
Yeah. It's all of this attempt to force a moral equivalency on two sides when there's a clear right and wrong. It is just crazy. But the Bible clearly says this is what's going to happen in the latter days. Evil is going to be called good, and good is going to be called evil. And even those that go to church will not be able to tell the difference between what's right and what's wrong.
Very true, James. Very, very true. Listen, I want to ask you a question about something related to this border situation. I was watching something on television, and you have to have, I tell you what, to live in this time of history, you have to have a little bit of humor. You have to have a little bit of levity because it would probably drive you insane if you don't. But I had to laugh. I want to say it was Jesse Waters tonight had a clip of a guy, a Democrat leader in Chicago, that was complaining about the migrants coming into Chicago because the migrants are basically taking over the U.S. right now. Illegal immigrants, illegal aliens. I'll just call them what they are, illegal aliens. Chicago's being overrun by them. Well, he doesn't blame the Biden administration for this. He doesn't blame Akers for this. He doesn't blame the Department of Homeless Security for this. He blames the J6 situation. And he went on a 10-minute rant about the extreme right-wing mega movement that has produced these conditions that are in the nation to where the illegal aliens feel like they've got a right to cause insurrection in these cities, trying to, again, you're speaking of the moral equivalency now, just get this insanity how they're trying to morally reconcile this, that because of the J6 quote-unquote insurrection, which wasn't an insurrection, because that was allowed and Donald Trump fostered that, then it's the same people that's fostering insurrection in these cities by illegal aliens. Now, Jeemes, just not to sound ugly, but it would take a complete buffoon moron to think such. And then that's what you've got out there tonight, parading itself as leader. This guy's a leader in Chicago. I can't remember who he was. This is one of the big leaders in Chicago. His political setup. Get me off the cliff here, my friend. Is it not the Biden administration's fault we got the border crisis we got right now?
Yeah, it's just ignorance gone to seed. And everywhere you look on TV, it's just in full display. It boggles the mind. If you would have told me 10 years ago that this sort of situation would have happened in our country, I would have said, you are crazy. There's no way. It's just absolutely wacky what's going on. But even in the worst of times, and repeatedly, even when Israel completely turned its back on God and went away, God had a remnant.
Yes.
and that's what I like to focus on. That's what I like to write about. And in my books, I like to focus on that remnant. That no matter how bad things get, God is going to isolate a special group of individuals of all races, of all denominations, and is going to equip them for the struggles and the battles that are ahead.
Do you believe, bringing this back down to our domestic situation, and I'm with you 1,000% what you just said, that's the only hope we really have tonight is God, Jeemes, and the Lord Jesus Christ. I mean, we as believers that believe in Christ, that is our only hope right now in this dangerous, perilous time that we live in. But Paul did say that in the last days, dangerous times, that's what that word perilous means, are coming. And I look at our nation tonight, and buddy, you have served. You and Brad Johnson are dear to me. Y'all are precious. I've met Brad in person. Hope to meet you in person one day. And I respect the service that y'all gave to our nation. But from your perch and from your knowledge, being in the trenches, so to speak, all these years, and you see the condition of the nation, and you see our enemies coming across our border like you do, it's not just illegal aliens that are coming across that border, Jeemes. It's terrorists. It's the same kind of terrorists that did the carnage in Israel on October the 7th that are flooding these borders. And look, it only took, a half dozen terrorists or 19 terrorists to do what they did on 9/11. Yesterday was the anniversary, or Sunday was the anniversary of the Mumbai attacks of that hotel. The terrorist attack in Mumbai, India, 178 people got killed. It was carried out basically by 12 teenagers with automatic weapons. And they went on that carnage of terror and an Islamic type attack. My question to you tonight is, how dangerous do you believe we're in? What kind of danger does this nation sit in tonight because of all of these factors that we're talking about? The Israel situation, the open border, a corrupt government, an inept government, a government whose Department of Homeland Security head is not concerned about the border tonight. He's concerned, literally said this yesterday, he said, I'm concerned that we're misrepresenting the pronouns of his illegal aliens, and if we find out our border agents are going to do it, that's a fireable offense. Not to close the border, but to make sure a transgender coming across the border will not be misrepresented by the wrong pronoun. James, that's apostasy. Where does that put us in danger? And are you concerned that these elements that are coming across are going to do something similar over here that they did on October the 7th?
Yeah, I have... over the years, I've been invited to speak to a number of groups, and I would highlight, the danger of the rapidly growing Muslim population, and especially in urban areas in this country, and especially that percentage that has been radicalized, not only overseas, but in this country.
Yes.
And there is going to be a time, I hate to say it, but there's going to be a time when we're going to see, bloodshed in the streets. I personally think that it's when, either Israel or the United States just finally have to take some sort of action against Iran, that a lot of these cells are going to be given the green light. And what we saw in Dublin to Ireland, and what we're seeing in other cities around the world, it's going to start coming to the American home place. I'm just sort of convinced myself that that's going to happen.
I am too. And let me, not to interrupt you, but it goes back, James, to the lawlessness that we're seeing. I was watching some things this afternoon on the news feeds, and I was reading a report Monday. Do you realize that California, the stores, their retail stores. Two of the biggest retail chains in California had to shut down. They lost 4.2, hold your seat on this, 4.2 billion with a B dollars last year from organized shoplifting. In other words, that's people, normal citizens that go into these stores, Jeemes, and steal. Just take things that don't belong to them. And because of this rampant shoplifting, you've got some of the most biggest stores in California leaving the state, shutting down, filing bankruptcy. They can't keep it up. And it's affecting Walmarts. It's affecting, again, the Targets, all of these department stores, retail outlets, malls. $4.2 billion. Jeemes, that is unreal, but that is a figure that is being reported as to how much has been stolen illegally. Now, you carry that over to what you just said. We already got a lawless problem in this country, my friend. And if you throw this terrorist threat on top of that, we got a cauldron of hell that's about to be unleashed on this nation. I'm afraid that we're not ready for.
And then we have this very vocal segment of the U.S. population that take incidents and trump the cause of eliminating police.
Yes.
You know, I'm starting to see these reports of hundreds of policemen in these metropolitan police forces, are ready to leave.
Yes.
Just because, they get no support whatsoever. And there's this element of lawlessness that you described that is taking over. At the same time, we've shot ourselves in the foot because we have completely undermined our law enforcement capabilities. And it is a recipe for absolute disaster.
Yeah. Well, and on this subject of the police, I want to ask you a question. I don't know if you've been following the case of the George Floyd situation, but just this weekend, Derek Chauvin, the police officer involved in that supposed, and I put supposed in big parentheses because I don't believe Chauvin killed Floyd. I don't. I think that he was basically railroaded into pleading out. Now, did he do some things that probably were not the best for a police officer to do? I'm not going to argue that point. But he's in jail for the next 22 years of his life, or how many ever years he's in there for, basically for a charge of murder. Well, he got stabbed almost to death this weekend by the prison in Arizona, and it's becoming more evident by the hour tonight that the prison officials knew about it. They put him back in the general population, and it wasn't within minutes he was fighting for his life. He's in solitary confinement tonight. But, Jeemes, when you see these kind of things go on, and again, the only time the left gets concerned about the violence in the country is if when they can use that violence, like you beautifully said a while ago, they use these things to trump the gun control crap, take your guns, take weapons from the citizenry. If we'll get the guns off the street, there won't be no shootings, there won't be none of this. And when the police do something that, is suspect and somebody dies, and look, let's just be frank and cut to the chase here in our audience tonight. George Floyd was no choir boy. He was breaking the freaking law when all of this took place, and there's no evidence that says otherwise. And again, you mess around and you break the law, you're going to pay a consequence for it. I'm not justifying anybody's violence and anything against him. But it's this terrible treadmill that we're on, Jeemes. We're headed toward a lawless society, friend. If you don't have law and order in a society, you have no society, correct?
That's right. And the very people that need to be protected by the police the most are the ones that'll suffer.
Exactly right.
And it all goes back to this, in my mind, this sort of neo-Marxist type of idea where you have to identify an oppressor class. And when you do that, then anything that you do to rise up or to resist, or any entitlement that you may enjoy, all is justified, because you've had historically an oppressor class that has held down, the legitimate rights and the legitimate ambitions of the people. That ideology is taking over, is being taught on our college campuses.
Yes.
The young people have soaked it in 100%, and it leads to just incomprehensible conclusions, and that's what we are facing today all over this country.
Do you think it's going to get worse before it gets better?
I personally do. Now, it depends on a lot of it depends on your presuppositions. Are things going to get better, or are they going to get worse? But I think things could get a lot worse.
Let me ask you this: going into 24, I've listened to a lot of voices. I got a couple more questions for you. We're going to open up the chat and take a few questions from our audience for you, if you can hang around with me a little bit tonight. I want to ask you this about the upcoming elections with President Trump. It looks like he is going to win this Republican nomination, but do you foresee any of these cases against him going anywhere? Do you have any concern for that with the justice system? And I guess the second question is, it's a hard question to answer, because I know that he's just one man, but do you believe a second term of Trump will solve these issues fully or partially, or not at all? What's your take on that? That's an opinion question.
Well, there's a lot of assumptions built into that question.
Yes.
But let's assume, for the sake of argument, that Trump runs, number one. Number two, is allowed to run, and number three, wins the election. The question is, will he be allowed to effectively administer as the highest executive in this country? Or will it be a replay of what it was before, when from the very first day in office, they tried to cut out the ground from underneath his feet from day one?
It's a great point, buddy. That's a greght point. And look, in all fairness and transparency, look, you've told me. I mean, and I don't look. I don't. I'm not a Trump worshiper. I think maybe the first go around I was at the little bit, and I think we watched 4 years go by. And look, I believe he made a lot of good decisions. He made a lot of bad calls with his temperament at times and some of the things he said, but those things don't bother us Southerners, because we're used to people. Yeah. We're used to people sitting on the front porch with a cup of tea and cussing us out. We're just used to that down here. And I've talked to New Yorkers up there, and the New Yorkers can handle Trump. I mean, New Yorkers look at Trump and they're one of his. I mean, he's one of them. They don't care. But most of the country sort of had a hard time adjusting to that kind of brashness coming from a president of the United States. But forget all that. But my question is, I'm with you. Even though we don't worship Trump, I don't see anybody else, Jeemes, with the political fortitude and the bravery, the courage to do the things that's got to be done to at least bring this thing back into some sense of sensibility. Look, I don't know how many illegals are here at this point. I mean, I've heard every figure from 10 to 20 million. Brother, that's an army. How do you round up 20 million illegals and get them out of the country at this point? You can't do it. I mean, have we reached a point of no return in this nation? Or I know God is our answer, and I know Christ is our answer, and I know there's a spiritual component to this that me and you both are on the same page with. We get it. But I'm just talking in general terms tonight, looking at the landscape, my friend. How far gone are we?
Well, that's a great question, and I'm not sure I'm the person to provide a definitive answer to that. But it seems to me on the border that we have to have a common sense policy, no matter who orchestrates the policy, to stem the flow. I'm not sure that any reasonable person could come up with a plan to send everybody back that's illegal. That problem, I think, that horse is out of the barn. Back that's ill.
Right. I totally agree with that, buddy. Let me just do a little house cleaning. Folks, if you've got a house cleaning issue in a good way, we're live with you tonight on a Tuesday night McFiles special. We got our dear friend, Jeemes Akers, former CIA analysis and a good friend of the show. Him and Brad are good friends, and we had Brad on last week, and Brad did a great job. Jeemes is doing a great job tonight. He's by phone. Victor Albaugh couldn't be with us tonight. But if you got a question, we're going to keep him about another 10 minutes or so, 15. If you got a question about things going on in the world tonight, feel free to ask it, and I'll ask Jeemes, and he can give us input and insight to it, and so forth. But if you got a question, the chat is open for that now. Buddy, what is your take on, I was talking to somebody today about the Middle East, and I want to get your opinion on this. I was talking about where America stands and how we're handling this, and I've got a twofold question for you. Number one, the anti-Semitism. We didn't really touch on this tonight, but a lot of this anti-Semitism, Jeemes, is coming from church people. It's coming from church voices, or at least people who claim they're Christian. I'm not saying they are Christian, but they claim they are. And the second question is, if America gets drawn into this conflict, do you see Russia and China entering into this? Do we have the potential, and I'm saying that with very kid gloves on tonight because I hope this is not the case, but do you see a potential for a world conflict if this thing in the Middle East don't get settled soon?
My personal opinion is that, when the old saying about assumptions, but my personal opinion is that as long as the conflict remains contained to Gaza, that we won't be drawn in.
Okay, fair enough.
If you put together a scenario where Hezbollah starts to be extremely active on Israel's northern border, then the chances of the conflict broadening to involve other countries increases exponentially from that point.
Okay. Do you...
The real key, and I think it has been, if you listen very closely to the Israelis, their war planners, their intelligence people, and others, the real danger for them is Hezbollah, which is much bigger, much better armed, much more sophisticated weaponry that sits in the north. As long as they stay parked on the sidelines, I think this situation has a possibility of coming to its own natural end without it becoming a worldwide contagion.
Do you see Iran and Iraq reconciling their differences, and basically the old attaché, the enemy of my enemy becomes my friend? Do you see an Iraqi-Iranian connection now in their efforts to destroy Israel? I kept hearing today again that there was an attack again out in the Mediterranean on one of our vessels. And Jeemes, these attacks keep going on. I think there's been like 72 attacks, various attacks on military personnel and ships since October the 7th. And we've done jack squat about it. And I don't look for us to do anything about it. And I know the conventional wisdom is, well, they're doing these things to draw us into this conflict, but you cannot keep letting these sovereign nations do this, Jeemes, without some kind of response, because they'll keep doing it, right?
No, you're absolutely correct. At some point, and I think we mentioned this on the previous broadcast, at some point, America's going to have to pull up its big boy pants and respond as the great power it is.
Absolutely.
And what point that comes, because we still have a government that's more inclined to apologize than to act. At what point that turning point is, I'm not sure. I'm not sure what the red line is in the Pentagon for action. I'm not sure a red line's even there in the White House for action. And so those things have to be calibrated in terms of the region.
Right.
And then you have a country that we have completely backed. The Russo-Ukrainian war is now over 640 days old.
Very true.
It looks like the Ukrainians have exhausted pretty much themselves. And so you have the specter of a resurgent Russia. If they turn the corner in that conflict, you have China parked on the sidelines, waiting just to see how things pan out. And meanwhile, their influence in the Middle East has grown incredibly since the beginning of all of this. And it's a dangerous world we're looking at a point in time, and I think you and I agree on this, at a point in time when American leadership has never been weaker.
That's very true, James. That's what's scary. That's very troubling. Got a very good few questions for you coming at you. Corey Aguilar, good to see you, Corey, tonight. In Facebook, she says, is the U.S., to your knowledge, James, even trying to negotiate with Hamas for the release? Do you think that they're giving lip service? And the reason she's asking that, and I heard Kirby last night. I couldn't believe he would say it. He was cornered. It was either Fox or CNN1, but they asked him point blank. They said, what's being done? And I don't know if it was a slip of the lip or he's actually this incompetent, but he says, we don't even know where these hostages are. And I'm thinking, how can you be the United States government and not know where your own hostages are? And that would go to Corey's question, are they even trying to get them out? It's a good question.
I think it's a great question. There is no one that takes a backseat to me in terms of being critical of this administration and its policies. But I do think that in the State Department, there are some very capable people that are desperately trying to negotiate the release of these hostages. I may be overly optimistic on that front, but I absolutely, if you drill down in all of these government organizations and you get past a politicized leadership, these are good people that are trying to do the best job they can. And I think that in the State Department especially, that they've got a lot of really smart people working this problem from several angles.
Yeah.
Do they know where the hostages are? No.
Probably don't.
I mean, Israelis knew where they were, and they have much better intelligence on the ground than we do there. They would have went in and got them.
That's very true, Jim. And again, there's 200. That's 200 that's still out there tonight that nobody seems to have an idea what's going on with. A couple of other good questions. Joanne Griffin's question, she says, do you see a timeline when the government would reenact the military draft? I think that's sort of answered by your question that if this conflict stays in the Gaza and it don't escalate, we're not looking at a world conflict. And that to me would be the only scenario where we would entertain that. That's my opinion. What's yours on the draft here in America? I've got a personal story of that. My son, 21-year-old, was concerned about it. He's asking me about it 2 weeks ago, and He don't get into politics like his dad, but he was concerned about that. And he was like, Dad, I'm hearing rumblings that they're going to do this. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, I was in the military when it switched from being the draft to an all-volunteer force, and with the pay raises and all of this. And so I saw both sides of that. I served and flew with a number of individuals that had been drafted, had joined the Air Force in particular, and the language programs in the Air Force, as an alternative to being drafted. And so those people were extremely capable. I mean that's as sharp a group as I've ever been around.
Yeah.
And then we started to get in these individuals that were volunteers. They just came in for the pay and for educational opportunities and those sorts of things. And there was a noticeable difference between the two groups of individuals. And so would the draft ever come back? Your point is well taken. It would take a world conflict of dimensions we can't imagine right now to force it. That's number one. Number two, you're several generations away now from the greatest generation, the World War II generation, and the children of World War II generation. And there is a very legitimate question in my mind whether patriotism exists to the point where young people would voluntarily serve their country anymore.
Yeah, it's a great point, James. That's an excellent point there, and I think that can't be – I don't think that statement you just made should be overlooked. That is a huge part of this that concerns me, is that even if they did reinstitute the draft, what would we get to be drafted at this point? Because a lot of these kids, the Vietnam situation, a lot of these kids fled to Canada. They fled to other countries not to be serving their country. And I foresee something similar to that going on if that was to happen again. Don't you?
Absolutely. I mean, I think that's probably a given. But let me give the other side of that. We had a Thanksgiving meal here at North Myrtle Beach at a friend's house. Her grandson was in the military and invited 3 of his friends over for Thanksgiving dinner. Those 4 young men, and all of them, I went out of my way to tell them how much I appreciated them serving their country. They were 4 outstanding young men. And so, and they were 19 years old. They were patriotic. All of them were serving in sort of a cyber-related positions. I enjoyed talking to them. I came away from that dinner really as encouraged as I've been in a long time with this younger generation. So if I make a flat assertion like that, there are exceptions, and there are some young people, I think, that would rise up and rise to the task. In history, I used to teach history. The very young people who protested and participated in leftist marches and the like in Great Britain before World War II became some of the most outstanding RAF pilots and a generation that answered the call.
Right.
So it may be too early for us to rule out this generation. I don't know.
I'm with you. I'm with you totally what you're saying. Good question from Roger Hooker tonight. He says, can you explain why the U.S. has spent over $100 billion for Ukraine and is planning to send $60 billion more. James, we're going to bankrupt this nation over a fraudulent war over there, man. You said it, 364. Did you say 364? 640 days.
No, 600. Today is 644 since Putin's special operation.
Yeah. What's your? Why are we sending so much money over there? And nobody seems to be screaming about it, except a few Republicans. And they need to be doing more than screaming. They need to be stopping the purse strings.
Yeah. I tend to agree with that. I think that, and you can't blame them. The Ukrainian leaders have done an excellent job, working the narrative in the United States to get as much aid as they can.
Yes,
and so they have really milked it for all it's worth. I personally believe that we shouldn't be giving as much to them as we're giving them. If your position is, well, every dollar that we give to the Ukraine is weakening one of our enemies, Russia, then it makes some sort of sense. But news bulletin, this country is broke.
Yes, it is, buddy. Yes, it is.
This country is broke, and we are giving all of these billions of dollars away, not to mention all these crazy social welfare programs that are going on. And we act as though there's an unlimited fund of money. I read today that, for instance, just the interest on the national debt, which now is 2.4%, will double by 2030, and then it grows exponentially afterwards.
I don't doubt that.
I love that word, exponentially, but it just grows out of sight after that. We have got to get control of the spending, or else my grandchildren are going to be in a debt hole so deep that they will never be able to climb out of it.
But James, it goes beyond a debt hole, my friend. It goes to a country. A country that's sustaining that kind of debt can't even exist. I mean, people don't realize this is a national security issue. This is a national security issue, this debt, because the more debt we get to our enemies, the more open door they've got to taking us over, correct?
Yes. Now, in the past, the national debt, when you float the bonds and the like, and the government doesn't spend within its means, and it has to float those loans and have people buy the bonds. They are really having trouble now selling U.S. bonds, and the countries that picked up the major slack in the past, that being in the recent past, China and Japan, are no longer buying up our debt. And so we are facing a huge problem. I mean, that's one of many problems.
Yes, it is, buddy.
But it's going to eat at the very fundamentals of this country. At the same time, you have a philosophy that attacks any form of capitalism.
Yes.
That would generate the tax money that would help us climb out of this debt. It is crazy.
Absolutely. One final question tonight for you, and it's from Joe Rowan. He says, do you believe that Trump believes in a one-state or a two-state solution in Israel, in your opinion? James, I want to chime in on that just a little bit first. I'm going to let you wrap us up with this. I believe that there's not been a president yet that has not made the fallacious argument and the failure and the faulty view that Israel can survive in the Middle East, giving up more of this strip of land that has already been torn away through these political deals to almost nothing anyway. I personally believe if Israel gave up every single inch of the Gaza, every inch of the West Bank, if they gave the Palestinians Jerusalem, and they did everything the Arabs were screaming for, and went back to pre-1967 borders, there would be no Israel tonight, James, because they would be destroyed. Because that is exactly what the Arabs want. It's not their land to give away. There's a spiritual component to this, but they are basically committing suicide doing it. I do not believe in a two-state solution. I do not believe it's going to solve peace. And one thing I'm hearing from Jewish people themselves, leaders, I've had 3 leaders on my show in the last month and a half. People in government, we had a humanitarian leader who's over a huge humanitarian organization there, had 2 people from the Knesset, and all 3 told me that Israel in the past thought the same lie. They bought the same line for a while. They've come to realize there is no two-state solution for peace because they don't have peace brokers. They got people that want to see them run into the Mediterranean and destroyed. I don't think Trump believes in a two-state solution, but he sure does act like it. And those Abrahamic Accords, and I know a lot of people in the mainstream media and even a lot of Christians would disagree with this tonight. Those Abrahamic Accords were not good for Israel because in the fine print of those Abrahamic Accords, Jeemes, was a call for a Palestinian state. And if you start capsulizing this terrorist group into a state, then you have got untold problems. So to Joe's question, Joe, your question, no. Him moving that embassy had nothing to do with his belief in a one or two state solution. Trump believes in a two-state solution. What say you, Jeemes? I'll let you wrap us up on this, and then I'll wrap us up later. Go ahead.
My personal view is that Trump backed the move of the embassy strictly to appease a very powerful wing of the Republican Party that advocated for the same thing. Whether his heart was really in it or not, I don't know.
It's a great point.
But I do not think that the two-state solution is again this equivalency trap, and what it does is completely avoids the question of spiritual historical rights. Of right and wrong, you know, and a number of other issues. I am not a huge advocate of two-state solution, although if you're looking at it from a worldly and diplomatic perspective, it makes sense. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well, I don't even think it makes sense from a worldly perspective, James, because, again, look at it this way. You mentioned the situation a while ago about the killers in the Rio Grande Valley coming across the state of, let's just say they come across Mexican lines and come into the southern part of the U.S., okay, and do what they do. Well, if those same terrorists flee to Mexico, then it becomes a diplomatic nightmare to get those terrorists out of that state because Mexico is a legal country, okay? And
right.
If you give these terrorists a state, and they do this same butchery against Israel as a state, then the world at large is going to say, well, Israel is infringing upon the state, and it's going to become virtually impossible to secure their border anywhere. So I'm not disagreeing with you. I understand where you're coming from with that. I just think that to capsule these people in a state's a very serious mistake. They're finding out, I think, that it ain't going to work. Hey, one final quick question. You can answer this in 1 minute. Do you believe that, and Roger Hooker asked this question from Facebook, he calls them the BRIC nations. He said, do you think we're going to be attacked here in America by any of the BRIC nations? What's your thoughts on that?
Well, I wouldn't rule it out, but I think it's over the horizon.
Okay, fair enough.
Quite a bit. I think the United States problem going forward is a very simple one, and that is it's going to be, if there's an attack that takes place, or if the United States is going to be weakened so that it is no longer a player in the last days, it is because it's going to be from internal divisions, attacks from the inside, that we no longer have the willpower to come against.
Right.
Disunity is the problem with the United States. It's not the other countries. It's our own disunity that will be our undoing.
Well, is that not what Khrushchev basically prophetically proclaimed in the 60s? In the 60s, he said, we won't have to fire a shot. Y'all will destroy yourself. And I think that it's coming to pass, Jeemes, in many ways. I hate to say it. I mean, I hate to admit that tonight, but I'm with you 1,000,000% on that sentiment. It's coming from within. These threats are coming from within our own borders, not from the external. These external threats don't scare me, but this internal unwillingness to call evil evil and call good good, that is more destructive to any society than anything Russia or China could pose a threat to us about.
Well, there's and I know you've got to go. There's the biblical example of Jesus Christ gathering those disciples to himself that are going to change the world.
Right.
The enemy that he feared the most was disunity among them.
So well said.
To the point that he garbed himself, he got them all together, he washed their feet, and he tried to give them a picture of the necessity of spiritual unity. This country needs a unifier, and that person I not see on the horizon in either party. I'll just tell it like I think it is.
No, I'm with you, buddy. Buddy, listen, you've answered the call again, and I want to thank you so much for being with me. We're going to have you back on soon. We'll have you on video next time. It's always good to know I can depend on you to come on in a crunch, and you did it again tonight, and you hit a home run, a grand slam. I'll give you even a grand slam. It's always good stuff. Listen, I'm going to give you 2 minutes to wrap us up and your final thoughts tonight, and I'll say goodnight to you. Thank you so much for being with us on the McFiles, and our audience loved you as always. And good stuff again tonight, man. What's your final thoughts?
My final thought is the same one I ended the last show with. I encourage your listeners to not be overcome with fear, no matter how bad things are getting. God is on his throne. He is not nervously shaken because of events that are unfolding in the Middle East.
That's right, buddy. That's right.
And I take, that is the only thing, actually, when I read the newspapers or listen to news reports, that I can take solace and comfort in.
Yeah.
God's in control.
I'm with you, buddy. Jeemes Akers, everybody. James, I'm going to say goodnight to you, man. God bless, friend. We'll talk to you again soon.
Thanks for the opportunity, Chris. It's always a pleasure.
Talk to you soon, friend. Good night.
Yeah. Good night.
Jeemes Akers, everybody. What a tremendous gentleman, former CIA analyst. He's good friends with Brad Johnson. Brad introduced me to Jeemes. Put some fire in that house for him out there tonight. And he is an outstanding guest, Roger. Thank you. Thank you so much. If you got a question, please, McFilesForum@gmail.com. You can send that to me. Good to see Dennis Floyd in the house tonight. Corey, good to see you, dear. Susan Beckett, Jimmy Lemons over there on Facebook. Brenda Shelley's in the house. Good to see her tonight. All you guys, Susan, good to see you. Good questions coming out of the chat tonight. Good stuff tonight. We're grateful for all of our Facebook audience and our YouTube audience, and we appreciate everybody. Looks got a few new names out there tonight, and so forth. Folks, it is 10:15. We had to start late tonight. We sort of, Victor Abal, we kept waiting for Victor, and we had actually reached out to Eric Caron to come on tonight, and neither one of them could, and I was sort of waiting to the very, very last minute to get somebody, and Jeemes came to mind, and I called him, and he absolutely, I'll come on, and he's never said no in a tight crunch, and I think he served admirably well tonight in Victor's absence and Eric's absence tonight, and McDonald will be with us later this week, probably, hopefully. But it was a good interview tonight, and I'm not going to keep you long. We're running late tonight. It's already 10:20. I want to end the show tonight. I'm not going to go through an afterthought. We normally do those. I'm not going to go do one like we did last night. We may do one Thursday night and Friday. I've got some somewhat troubling news tonight I want to end the show with, and I'm reading a post, and I don't know, we can't really confirm this yet. There are some things that we can sort of put together, two and two together. Anyway, there is a story that is coming out of Europe tonight. Janet Ossenbard, she was the maker of The Fall of the Cabal. She was a guest on our show a few times back in 2019, once or twice, and she went missing for 3 weeks. Over the last 3 weeks, it's being reported tonight that Janet has taken her life and has basically lost her life due to suicide. Our prayers for the family. Janet was deep into Q. I didn't see eye to eye on a lot of the things that she said. I had her on out of curiosity more than anything else. We were young. It was during the time the show was less than a year old, maybe a year and a half, and we were trying to get our legs underneath us, and we were trying a lot of guests out during that time, and I saw a lot of holes in the Q stuff around that time. It was around 2020 when all this stuff started unraveling, and Janet was heavy into that. But I hate to hear of any situation. I don't care how much I disagree with somebody. I don't wish harm of this nature on them. And our prayers for her tonight, I pray for her family, because I know they're grieving. A lot of good friends of hers are grieving tonight. She was a guest on this network, and out of respect for her family, we send our condolences tonight and our sadness relating to this tragedy. We don't know 100% the details, so a lot of what I'm saying to you is based upon one or two posts that are out there. It's very eerie that not many people are talking about it. We only know this from this post, that she had been missing for about 3 weeks, and they found her, and evidently she had taken her own life. And our, again, tragic end to her life there. It's not the time to make character calls about people. We just grieve with the family, and I do feel a sense of sadness tonight, because she was always cordial, and we talked, and again, where I didn't see eye to eye on a lot of stuff, we did have her on as a guest, and again, a lot of it was just newness and curiosity more than anything else. We had a lot of guests on during those early years, and we didn't have them back on, and Janet, was just one of them. I just didn't see eye to eye on a lot of the stuff she was putting out there, and but I don't want to see anyone come to an end like this. And it just sort of was a gut punch tonight when I heard about it. Troy Patriot sent me this right before the show, and it was almost surreal, and I hate to have to report that as we go out on that kind of note tonight. So our prayers for the family of Janet Ossenbard. She was the one that made the Fall of the Cabal series, and those videos. I'm not going to encourage you to go watch them, folks. There's a lot of stuff in those videos I do not agree with, and a lot of it, sadly, that series fueled a lot of the QAnon talk and a QAnon theory, and it did a lot of damage to a lot of people's faith. And what's sad about it is people took it as law, And now even the Q proponents are admitting tonight something that most of us already knew. It was a psyop. It was misinformation. But people were believing it as truth. And that's so dangerous. It is so dangerous to believe something that's misinformation as truth. And again, I have no other details than that. I don't know what caused her to go missing. I don't know what caused her to take her life. I don't know. I do know the spiritual part of this is not good. The devil is behind it. The demons that whatever was affecting her spiritually. And I'm not her judge tonight. I'm not saying that in judgment of her. I'm not saying that as some kind of moral compass as to what happened to her. It hurts. It hurts me inside to even have to report it tonight. But because she was part of our show, I feel like we need to respect her memory and respect her family tonight. And our prayers for the Bond family and whoever was in her life. I'm sure they're grieving tonight. And we're sorry to hear about it. We really are. I want to mention to the gentleman that keeps coming into the show, you won't be back tonight, about opening our eyes. We do open our eyes. You need to open yours. And there's a lot of people out there, folks. You know, Jeemes said something tonight about people calling evil good and good evil. And people that are in this fog tonight, people that are in this haze, in this meth-induced haze, you would serve yourself well. Don't bring that crap into this network, because we're not going to truck with that. We're not going to truck with you, because going forward into 24, we got our eyes wide open, and you don't need to be lecturing us here about opening our eyes. Trust me, we got our eyes more than wide open, but we also got our brain wide open. And we're of a sound mind, which is at a premium these days in this country that is descending rapidly into darkness. And all I can tell you is stay with us on this train. We'll do our very best to keep you out of the ditch and out of the weeds and thinking soundly, because that's what we are going to try to do. I want to thank James Akers tonight. It's late. I'm not going to keep you anymore. I could say a lot more tonight, but I'm going to let it go at this. Our prayers again for the family of Janet Ossibard, and our prayers for you tonight. Be blessed out there. I'll see you in the morning, Bible study, faith. Tomorrow night, Wednesday night fellowship, the land series. We're going to talk about the land more with Israel. We're getting more into modern stuff, and we're going to try to talk about that hurricane tomorrow night that we meant to talk about Sunday night, tied to the land. And we're going to get into some deep stuff over the next weeks on Wednesday night, and then we're going to get right back to Philadelphia. Philadelphia is the churches. We've got 2 more churches, and then we're going to move on into more of the prophetic stuff of Revelation after that. I'm glad I thought about this. One announcement, John McTurnan and I, after a long discussion this evening, we have decided we're not going to do a conference this weekend. However, Houston, January, we're coming in January for the same conference. We'll give you a date in a few weeks, but no prophecy conference this weekend. We're going to be better prepared to wait on it and to do it right, and then to just rush down there, hope people show up, and waste 2 days with 5 people there. And it's not that 5 people would be a waste. You know me, I'd teach you if I had 3 people there. I've done that before on the Sunday. I had 3. Preached to them like there was 30. So I don't care how about the numbers, but we just felt like I think the Holy Spirit was in this because we want to do it right. And we're working on a few other logistical problems that we had this weekend. And I think they're going to be fixed by January. So we're going to be starting these prophecy conferences next year. This will be the first one. We're going to start in John's Place of Houston. We may do one here in the mountains the next time in different cities. And then we're going to be back out seeing you all too this spring, hopefully in summer, as the weather warms up. South Dakotians, I'm coming to see you. I'm not coming to see you in January, February, but I'm coming to see you sometime next year. Mama didn't raise a total fool, and I don't travel to North Dakota and South Dakota in the middle of winter. The Southerner wouldn't survive it. So, but we're coming. Kansas City, coming back to see you. We're coming back to see you. And other places the Lord's laid on our heart. We'll see. We'll see what 2024 holds. It's going to be a wild year, folks. It's going to be a wild year. That's all I can tell you. Get your seatbelt on. Get your eyes open, as this troll was trying to disrupt our show with tonight. We've already got our eyes open. We got our eyes on Jesus. We got our eyes on above. And you'd be wise to keep your eyes on him. And operate with power, love, and of a sound mind. And enjoy the journey with us. All right? All right. I'll see you tomorrow. We'll talk more tomorrow. A lot more to come. I'm glad for Jeemes Akers tonight. Hope you enjoyed him. God bless you out there. God bless your families. God bless this great nation of America. Hope you had a great Thanksgiving. It's holiday season. We got Christmas music coming, new music coming. And we'll talk about that more tomorrow night with you as well. A new release coming out very soon, a few weeks. And so a lot of good stuff coming. Thank you for your donations. We could use those heavily right now into the month. And just go to our website, themacfiles.org, and there's ways to donate. And we thank you for your support of the McFiles and the host. We appreciate you much. And until tomorrow, this is Christopher McDonald for Jeemes Akers. I'm going to give you a little chance to fellowship out there tonight. Have a good night, everybody. Be blessed. I'll see you tomorrow. Good night.